video on 1099 information. I'm Jason from Nelco. Nelco and Rentech partnered together to assist their users in 1099 filing. You probably think about 1099 filing for about a month or two out of the year. Here at Nelco, we think about it year-round. We are constantly thinking about how we can better improve our processes, our products, and the information we provide to you, in addition to making sure that everything is compliant with IRS specifications. So what is a 1099? A Form 1099 is used to report a number of different types of information, including taxable income, to the Internal Revenue Service. A Form W-2, for example, is used to report employee compensation and benefits paid. A Form 1099 is used to report non-employee compensation. And depending on the type of information being reported, there is a specific 1099 form. So most small businesses, the most common 1099 miscellaneous is the most common one. A 1099-R is for distributions of pensions and annuities. A 1099 dividend is for dividend distributions. A lot of different kinds of 1099s. Again, the miscellaneous is the most common one. So that's the one we choose to focus on. There's a little look at the form right here. A lot of different information on here. For example, fishing boat proceeds, one you probably don't use. Gross proceeds paid to an attorney, crop insurance proceeds. A lot of different information on here, most of which does not apply to you. There is some that will, though. And so you want to make sure that this form is filled out completely and accurately. So who needs to file a 1099 miscellaneous? Most small businesses, because a 1099 miscellaneous must be filed by any individual or entity that has paid out more than $600 in rents or services performed by a trader for a trader business by people not treated as its employees. Again, an employee receives a Form W-2. You guys probably receive a lot of those in the mail every year or from your employer. However, 1099 miscellaneous is for non-employee compensation. There's a couple other smaller, less common scenarios where you would need to file 1099, but the big one is if you paid out $600 or more in rents or services. When don't you need to file a 1099 miscellaneous? The form doesn't need to be filed if the amount paid is less than $600. That's on an annualized calendar year. So between January 1st and December 31st, if you paid out more than $600, you need to file a 1099 miscellaneous. If the payment is made for the purchase of goods instead of services, you do not need to file a 1099 miscellaneous. For example, if you go to Home Depot and you purchase a little piece of equipment, you don't need to file a 1099 miscellaneous for Home Depot. You're not paying for a service there, you're buying a product. If the payment is made to a corporation, if the person doing the service for you is a corporation, you don't need to file a 1099 miscellaneous to them. Last area is a little bit gray, and so it's something that I would suggest that you contact your local accountant if you have any questions. We'll try to make it clear here. The payment is not made in the course of your trade or business. You don't need to file a 1099 miscellaneous. This is only for business-related expenses and services. For example, if I have someone come and paint my house, that's my personal residence. I don't need to file a 1099 miscellaneous to that person. It's not made in the course of my trade or business. Again, if there is questions about whether a certain payment and a service is done in the course of your trade or business, I highly recommend you reach out to your local accountant and figure that out with them. Do you really have to? The answer is probably yes. If you fail to file the correct 1099 by the due date and cannot show reasonable cause, you may be subject to a penalty. Ultimately, there's some pretty stiff penalties. We'll go over what those penalties are in just a moment. But some of them might apply for things like failing to file on time. We'll talk about due dates in just a second, too. Failing to include all the required information. Again, there's a lot of information on 1099 miscellaneous that may not apply to you, but you do need to make sure that the information that does apply to your situation is filled out. Failing to meet the electronic filing requirements. Nelco and Rentech have you covered. Our system will file electronically to the IRS, so you don't have to worry about that. Failing to file compliant paper forms. Again, Nelco and Rentech have you covered. Our system will make sure that the paper forms that we send out to your vendors and recipients will be correct and on IRS compliant formats. Lastly, failing to include information that is correct. Obviously, if you put incorrect information, you could face a penalty there. So when we look at the amount of the penalties, you can look at the different amounts here, but the longer you wait to get that information corrected and sent out, the higher the penalty gets. It goes from $50 to $100 to $250. But lastly, one I want to focus on is if the failure to file a correct information return is due to intentional disregard or not meeting correct information requirements, the penalty is at least $500 per information form with no maximum penalty. So basically, if you intentionally decide not to do these, you know you have to, but you just decide not to, you are looking at a $500 per return penalty, pretty stiff. Due dates. Generally speaking, the IRS requires that paper copies are furnished to the recipients by January 31st. You need to have them postmarked in the mail to those people by January 31st. This year, the IRS, the IRS gives you an extra day because January 31st happens to fall on a Sunday. So this year you have until February 1st to get those copies in the mail to the recipient. And then if to send copies to the IRS, you do need to have those sent electronically by March 31st. Some people like to send the paper copies to their recipients first and then send the copies to the IRS later. My personal preference is just to go ahead and send them together. We give the capability to combo those together in the system. It just kind of gets the 1099s off your plate a little bit sooner, less things to think about, less things to worry about. You get them done by the end of January and you're all set. Is it secure? And the answer is absolutely. The IRS uses SSL communication protocol and 128-bit encryption. Again, a lot of words there. Might not mean anything to you, but ultimately it's a very high communication protocol and secure standards that are used by things like 8 government agencies, software developers, financial institutions. The second point there is that Nelco and our systems are SOC 2 certified. What does SOC 2 certification mean? Well, we went through an internal process where we had an external audit to make sure that all of our products and systems were secure against things like identity theft and privacy concerns. So SOC 2 is an extremely high standard that we hold ourselves to that we decided to go ahead and enter into recently just to make sure that all of our bases were covered and our customers could have the assurance that their data was being handled with the utmost privacy and security. That concludes our brief video here. If you have any questions, again, feel free to contact Nelco or Rentech. Our information is there on the screen. If you have any specific questions about your filing circumstance, I would suggest you reach out to your local accountant. Thank you very much, and we look forward to speaking with you.